Hey friends, Michelle Saxman, sorry, kind of went live a little faster, radio's on. I'm trying to commit each and every day to do a Facebook Live. Today's not going the way I had planned, but between 10 and 10:30, I want to do a Facebook Live, stay connected. So right now I'm actually in the car and waiting for Nora to finish up with some testing over at school. But I wanted to go ahead and take a few minutes to share something with you that I think is worthy of sharing, a lesson I'm learning, and that is that God does not part the waters until we obediently enter. And so I'm going to share a little story about Moses, a little story about David, a little story about me. So I'm not a historian, I'm not a Bible scholar, but some lessons I've learned from either going to a Bible study or just being at church and listening to the sermons. And so Moses was called to free the slaves, the Israelites, from Egypt, the Pharaohs. He was called to lead the Israelites out of slavery. And what I think is either, the mindset of the slaves saying like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? The Pharaoh, we had to go through all the testing for the Pharaoh to actually release the slaves and allow them to go. He had to, test all the plagues, lose his own son, and then he agrees to release the slaves. So as Moses, I can only imagine, is walking through the desert and coming to the edge of the Red Sea, that there's probably a bunch of grumbling with the people, the Israelites, going, you know what, now Moses, look where you've brought us, and is this really a better place? And Moses had the faith. But it wasn't until he got to the water's edge and he raised his staff and he entered it into the water that the waters actually parted. Now, God could have opened that waterway and he could have parted the Red Sea long before Moses ever got there. As they were approaching and coming through the desert, God could have parted the sea. But that's not what God chose to do. God needed the heart and the mind of all of those people to see the power of him through Moses at that time. But God could have parted the sea before they arrived at the water's edge. But Moses had to be in the waters and obediently raise his staff, and then the seas would part. Now I'll share a story about David. So David was a little shepherd boy. He had already been anointed by Samuel. He's up in the fields. He's with his sheep. And there's a battle going on, and his brothers are engaged with the Philistines. And David's dad calls him down from the fields and asks him to go and take some meals down to the brothers. So he's bringing nourishment. He's bringing food, energy, resources to his brothers down on the field. Now, all the Israelites at that time, all those engaged in the battle with the Philistines, were also naysayers. They were the ones with the mindset saying, this can't be done. Look at their size. Look how big they are. Look at their weapons. There's no way. David comes in from the fields, having spent time with his heavenly Father, free of all the negativity, and he enters the battlefield. Then he goes to the water's edge. I think it was the stream's edge, and that's where he gathers his pebbles, his stones, to go back and engage in the battle. But it's not until David actually enters with the weapon of God's choice that David is able to take down the giant. So again, David had to enter the battlefield with the tools and the weapons that God had chosen. God could have knocked down the Philistines and the giant before David arrived, as David was arriving, but God chose at a certain point David's obedience to enter the field. So why do I think it's going to be any different that God's going to clear my path and show me the way before I enter the field? I've decided I'm a little bit more like Gideon. I want to test God a little bit. I want him testing, that I think it was the sheepskin for Gideon. Make this dry, make everything around it wet. Make this wet, make everything around it dry. Are you really who you say you are? Then God gives him the name of warrior. But for me, I said, God called me, I literally say about 10 years ago, he called me out into the waters. And I'm one of those people that I'll kind of put my feet in over the edge of the boat and put my feet in and be like, okay, the water's fine. God, you're still there. You want me to do what? You want me to walk on the water? Can't walk on the water. Just when Jesus called Peter out and said, keep your eyes on me. Then I become that little kid that kind of rolls over at the side of the pool and they put their belly down and their feet are dangling and they're testing the waters. Can they stand? How deep is it really going to be? But again, that's me putting my feet in over the edge, got my back to Jesus. Well, I'm finally in a season where I think I'm being a little bit more obedient. God has seasoned me in such a way that I'm rebuilding my confidence. I've, question myself all the time. You don't know enough about the Bible. You're not a Bible scholar. You need to go back to school. No, I don't. I need to be just like you, just somebody who believes after God's heart. Not going to get it right all the time, but my heart and my intention are in alignment, and just kind of step into the waters. And so I feel as though many years ago, God has asked me to kind of step onto the platform of social media. That is well beyond my comfort zone, people. I'm not into Twitter, Facebook, social media, Pinterest, all the rules of blogging. I've had to learn a lot. Then again, I go, this world tests your performance on how many likes, how many shares, how many followers, how many tweets, how many retweets, how many pins, how many hearts, how many blah. That's how the world measures our success. And I'll say, God gave me a wink this morning that he's thanking me, and I'm being obedient and stepping out and giving voice. So I commit to you. Just think about it. What's God asking you to do? And how are you responding? Because he's not going to make the change in the battlefield until you actually enter it with the weapons and the tools that he's choosing for you. So just think about it a little bit. I enjoy learning about the characters in the Bible, the ordinary people that God uses in extraordinary ways. And just get ready, because he's getting ready to use you. He's seasoning you just right so that you can be a platform and a voice for him. Y'all have a super blessed day. Stay connected to the vine, and I will talk to you soon.